Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Sunday. That's right. Full Press NFL Sunday is back, and we are 1 week away from, well, our first Sunday full of NFL games. But this Thursday, we get it all kicked off with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. So, first season in a while without Tom Brady. I'm wearing my shirt in honor of him. I drafted him in my fantasy league, very last pick, by the way, not first or anything like that. I'm not crazy. I'm just a little obsessed. That's all. It's Braden. I'm not going to lie. At some point in your life, maybe it's 10 years from now, maybe it's 15 years from now. At some point in your life, you're going to go through this when Patrick Mahomes hangs it up. But let me tell you, it's not a great. I'm doing a lot of mental exercising right now. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe he's already entering his seventh year in the league this year and sixth as the starter. So, these last 5 years have kind of flown by, and yeah, just kind of crazy to see. Myself now. There's a lot of rookies that are younger than me. It's kind of a surreal feeling, but yeah, just can't wait to get the NFL season started. I'm always entertained by college football, but NFL is always the one that I would probably watch, nonstop if I could. So can't wait to see what happens this week. And it just seems like there's a lot of optimism for some teams that have either missed the playoffs lately or have been through a lot of rebuilding phases lately. So just seems like everyone, as usual, believes they're going to make the playoffs, and just can't wait to see kind of what transpires this upcoming week.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's it is sort of I say it as a Patriot fan, and obviously someone who followed Brady's entire career. It really is kind of a new era of football. I mean, we've been inching closer and closer to that, and I know Aaron Rodgers is still around as kind of the resident old guy now. But I always contended that you could make the argument, and I get people get kind of confused with this whole discussion when I bring it up, but like I didn't believe that quote unquote best quarterback in the league was a year to year thing. Like if you won the MVP, you're automatically the best. Doesn't
Right.
mean you didn't have the best season. Just I think it was a title that you hold on to it if you're truly elite. And I truly thought that mantle was passed last season, because I do believe by the end of 2021, Tom Brady, I think, was still the best quarterback in the league, despite Mahomes' success. Obviously, he didn't win the MVP. We can sit here all day and argue and say, okay, well, Tom probably should have won in 2021, and his passing raw stats were actually probably better. I think he threw more touchdowns than Mahomes last year and threw more yards than Mahomes.
I think
Barely. I mean, they're very close numbers, but
yeah.
regardless, you one MVP, the other didn't. But the point is, I thought Brady was still the best at the conclusion of the 2021 season. Throughout the course of 2022, we saw that mantle start to swing in favor of Mahomes, and obviously it was capped off with not only another Super Bowl victory at MVP, and then of course the retirement of Brady. Because again, I mean, that helps the cause. So in the big picture, you're talking about truly now the new era of football. I mean, there's really not much of a link to the past, and I don't mean this just in disrespect to Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think he has had as significant of an impact, clearly, as Brady, but some of the other elite quarterbacks in this game, including Patrick Mahomes, and he's only
Right.
played nearly a third of his career. So it's truly a new era in the NFL. New quarterbacks, new. Again, I say Aaron Rodgers is the old guy, but really of the elite quarterbacks, it's Patrick Mahomes is kind of the old guy now, because you have Josh Allen, who's a little bit younger, but Jalen Hurts, you have Trevor Lawrence. You're seeing some of these young guys come up. I mean, hell, we saw Caleb Williams this weekend. Look, a
Right.
little bit like Patrick Mahomes, except for the fact that he actually completed the pass. So, but no, look, this is a new era, truly, of football, and I think there's something to be said about Brady's retirement and kind of ushering in now, like I said, truly a new era.
Right, and I think just seeing kind of, that run, near the end of his time in New England, whereas they were in the Super Bowl every other year, it seemed like. I think it was what, 7 straight seasons maybe. By the time they won Super Bowl, I think it was what, 53. So just these last few years, it's kind of, you're seeing teams kind of break these playoff droughts or playoff winning streaks that were there before possibly I was born, or at least the early 2000s. So kind of seeing those come to an end, and you just look at where we're at in the NFL right now, where teams like the Bengals and the Bills, teams that were for a while historically a laughing stock, just kind of be near the top. It's kind of interesting to see how how are some of these teams going to react, when you really have the target on your back. And obviously, the Chiefs have had that the last few years, and this year's schedule. They get the rematch with the Eagles at some point. They'll host both the Bills and the Bengals. So the home schedule just at Arrowhead alone is going to be incredible to watch this season.
And look, I mean, I think, obviously the landscape of the quarterback pay scale has changed
Right.
drastically, certainly over the last couple of years. And Mahomes obviously doesn't make the most, but we are seeing some of the early impacts of regard. Like, he doesn't have to make the most money
Hmm.
to have that contract make an impact. And I'm not blaming him. I'm not, this is just the nature of the game. I mean, every single team deals with this, especially when you have an elite quarterback. Now, um, we see it right now with Chris Jones. Chris Jones wants more money, longer term. It seems like there's a marginal difference in number, but the problem is, I mean, the Chiefs just don't have the cap space. They don't have the ability to do that. I know there's a group of NFL fans out there that think the cap is crap, and you can just look at Los Angeles right now.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, I'll sit here and tell you that I give them maybe 4 wins this season, and that's a team that's going to struggle immensely, not just this season, but in the future, because they have so much wasted money on the cap. And again, I mean, it worked because, well, they won a championship. And
Mhm.
the crazy thing is, I mean, the margin of that being a moderate success to a massive failure was about less than a yard. Let's put it that way. Um, Maybe Todd Bowles doesn't call an all-out blitz and allow Cooper Kupp to just run freely deep in the end zone, deep in the back into the Buccaneers zone. But hey, that's in the past. Whatever.
Right.
The point is, the Chiefs are obviously, like you said, they're used to being the hunted. This is not a new territory for them. But I think the newness that they have to deal with is some of the lingering cap casualties, so to speak. I mean, because now it's 2 years in a row you don't have Tyreek Hill.
Right.
Juju Smith-Schuster's gone. Chris Jones, I mean, clearly isn't going to play week 1. I don't know how long this holdout's going to last. I think what he's doing is banking on the fact that this Chiefs defense it's pretty good. I mean, it's not great, it's not terrible, but without Chris Jones in the middle, it's a huge liability. And I think he's
Right.
kind of banking on the fact that maybe the Lions come in with a very potent offense and absolutely light them up. That, I mean, they could win the game ultimately, but if they give up 30 plus points to the Lions, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, Chris Jones, yeah, we need to get
Right.
him back in here. So, but again, I mean, it's not as easy as just giving him the money. I mean, there's a domino effect to that, and I think the Chiefs, and this is what separates great teams from not so great teams. The great franchises, and we're seeing that with the Chiefs, they know how to adjust on the fly. They know how to pick and choose what battles they need to fight. Maybe they lose Chris Jones. Maybe they take a small step back. but they're not going to overpay Chris Jones and put themselves in a position where they're just not going to be able to compete for 4 or 5 years. So,
Yeah, and I think you made a good point on just the domino effect. I mean, you look at guys like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith on the interior offensive line. Entering their third year this season, they're going to be, probably a high priority for negotiations coming up next offseason. Nick Bolton's kind of in that same camp. Kansas City's usually actually been willing to kind of pay linebackers, even though not a lot of other teams have. So there's definitely some younger pieces that are going to be due extension soon, and it's always kind of the younger guys usually are going to get kind of a little bit of an edge in those scenarios. It seems like so from Kansas City standpoint, yeah, with Chris Jones, it's definitely not going to be the easiest offense to face in Week 1, and like you said, without Chris Jones in the middle, you have less guys to kind of double team or obviously to account for moving around the defensive line play to play. So I think that's going to be interesting against that particular offense Week 1. Just seeing which guys are kind of counted on the most to rush the passer. You have a rookie first round pick Felix Anudike-Uzomah, kind of still developing and learning. I think this was a major point that was made throughout training camp on just kind of how raw he is right now as a first round pick, and then Mike Dana, he's been a decent rotational player in the past couple of years, but really hasn't had the workload of a starter throughout his career. So you just look at how young that defensive line is right now. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to step up without Chris Jones, no matter how much time he misses.
yeah, no, I do. I wish I had this actual stat in front of me because I thought it was pretty interesting. But the splits with where the Chiefs rank in terms of quarterback pressures with and without Chris Jones on the field is a pretty drastic swing. You're talking about a team that's in, I believe, the top 5 with him on the field, but then plummet to one of the worst teams in the league when he's not on the field. And look, I mean, he's one of the best defensive players in the league. I mean, that's not terribly surprising, but it does kind of give you an indicator possibly where Chris Jones is coming from, saying like,
Right.
hey, let's, you can talk all you want, but let's see the product on the field. And you know what? I don't think he's rooting for a Chiefs loss, but like I said, I think he might be in the back of his mind, the worse the Chiefs defense does, the better for him, especially if Jared Goff is able to, move up and around the pocket and kind of, manipulate the defense that way. And like, look, I mean, he's not the most elite quarterback in the league, but he's good enough certainly to
Right.
take advantage of a weakness. And the Chiefs certainly could be showing that. So obviously that's going to be one of the biggest storylines this season. Yeah. Kyle's right. Chris Jones says, let's win 50-45. Let's have a repeat of that Rams
Yeah.
game, except this time in reverse. You know what I mean? Just like let's score, let's have 100 points on the table, let's win, but also let's give up 45 points, and my point is proven. So
Throw back to
mine is
Mahomes college days there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Mahomes versus Goff. What do you know? There's a lot of similarities to that. Hey, you never know. You never know. That'd be great. That'd be a great way to kick off the season, Thursday Night Football. But so anyways, obviously the Chiefs are always going to be the story, obviously seeking that repeat. First team to repeat since, 20 years ago now, because it was the 03-04 Patriots that completed that first back-to-back Super Bowl, or the last back-to-back Super Bowl win. So anyways, the rest of the NFL, though, obviously you go over to New York and Aaron Rodgers is the story. And look, I mean, I think it's, good for Jets fans. I think they're better, certainly, based on the quarterback play they got a year ago. I mean, you can't go much further back than what they were. I just, again, I wonder, and I feel like a good start for this Jets team is crucial. I don't think they can struggle and recover. Like
Right.
the Bucks kind of struggled the first month. They were inconsistent, obviously, with Brady. I'm talking in 2020 with Tom Brady. They went 2-2. They had that really kind of disappointing debut against the Saints, albeit they didn't have any preseason because of the pandemic and all that stuff. But it was still kind of a struggle, and then they struggled a little bit in the middle of the season. I don't know if the Jets can start 2-2 or 1-3 and really recover, because I think, for one, Aaron Rodgers isn't coming to town with 6 Super Bowl championships on his back. So as great as he is, and he is great, he doesn't have that cachet or credibility, so to speak, when it comes to that. And he has had his own struggles getting over the hump over the past decade. So it's not so much of just trust me, guys. It's the questions are going to start right away. So I think of any team, I think Buffalo could struggle and be fine. If they start 2-2, so be it. Like, I think at the end of the year they'll be fine. Same with Kansas City. If they come up, Kansas City could start 1-3 in the first month of the season, and I'm just gonna be like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, they'll be fine. I don't think it's going to happen, but the point is, if the Jets do that, that's it. Their season's over. I have no confidence in them digging themselves out of the hole because, well, it's the Jets. I think the media and the attention will be ruthless. I think it's going to be ruthless one way or the other, because I do think they're going to struggle at one point. But again, Aaron Rodgers is a guy who, as great as he is, has his own hurdles to get over, and they very much kind of go hand in hand with the Jets, and that is, well, when are you going to win a Super Bowl? So, So to me, I think the Jets, very crucial for them to get off to a solid start. I think they have to go 3-1 and kind of start building off that. If they do anything worse, or if they fall to 1-3 or 2-2, I think there could be some panic pretty early on.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember all the first 4 games. I know they got the Bills, the Cowboys, and the Chiefs is week 4 Sunday night. So
Yeah.
you talk about that stretch. I mean, you're going to be facing a lot of offenses where Aaron Rodgers right away is going to really have to try to match these guys in Mahomes and Josh Allen. And I guess we'll see what Dak turns out to be this year. I don't really have a lot of high hopes necessarily, but that's still going to be a matchup where the points are going to be at a premium. So you just kind of look at what they have brought in around him. Obviously, some of his buddies from Green Bay, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. We kind of know what to expect there, but Garrett Wilson can quickly break out into one of the top wide receivers this year. Obviously, won the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, and I think it's just Ohio State's had all these guys come out that are just so smooth at separation and being able to get open in tight spaces, and I think that's a perfect mix for Aaron Rodgers, someone that we heard kind of some of those questions about the offensive line, but he's usually been a guy for the most part that likes to get the ball out quick, likes to let his guys work in space. So I'm really excited to see how Garrett Wilson does, but I do wonder if this offense truly still has enough depth around him at playmaker, and if they're going to be able to stand the whole season and remain healthy, because we kind of know what the injury history has been at times for Lazard and Cobb, and even McCole Hardman, I know, going to be a slot guy for them. So it's a lot hanging on Garrett Wilson, and seeing if these guys around him can remain healthy.
Yeah, it seems very much like the same story that it was in Green Bay. Just swap Garrett Wilson for, excuse me, swap Garrett Wilson for Devontae Adams. Obviously, he's not Devontae Adams. He might be. He might turn out to be Devontae Adams, but even with Adams in their last season together, they had just the 10th best offense. And
Right.
I keep saying that I just don't think that's good enough to win in this league. I think you can win with mediocre defense. And for ages, people keep saying defense wins championships, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. It's an offensive league. It's always been an offensive league, or at least in the modern, the last 20 years, let's put it that way. More so the
Right.
last 10 to 15, it's obviously become even more so. But it's a league about quarterbacks and playmakers. And especially now with the more open offenses, you need those playmakers. So yes, offense wins championships. I think you can win with a 15th ranked defense, but I don't think you can win with a 10th ranked offense, because eventually you're going to have to elevate this offense above the average. And like I look back and my co-host on FBC Radio Live, John Sapichetti, always brings up the fact, or at least likes to remind me of the fact that Aaron Rodgers has had a 22 game streak of not throwing over 300 yards in a game.
Wow.
And
22.
yeah, and in 2023, that's Mac Jones has more 300-yard passing games than Aaron Rodgers. And I just don't think that's going to be good enough, especially in that division and especially in that conference, to win in this league. And they're going to put a lot on their defense. And I think their defense is going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, defense isn't the game. It's offense. Offense wins championships. I really want that to start catching on because it's been true for so long.
Right, and I think in the Jets' case, especially with how young that defense is, I think altogether it's with the evolution of the offense and what different people are kind of incorporating year to year. It's so hard to be obviously consistent as a defense in the areas that they were last year. With the turnovers, the pressure on the quarterback. I mean, that's such a hard thing to replicate for a younger group sometimes as well. So, like we said, just facing the schedule that they're going to have, it's not going to be always, the most opportunistic, situations that they'll find themselves in compared to last season. And I think that's going to be fun to watch for a group led by Quinnen Williams, who just got paid, and obviously last year's defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner. So that'll be interesting to see just how quickly they're able to kind of apply pressure when they're not always having to kind of make the momentum changes in games and see how those guys are able to create turnovers at least on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like, again, can they match that consistency from a year ago? Because like I said, I think their defense is going to be really good this year. I think they play with a lot of tenacity. I think there's a lot of, keep throwing cliche hunger out there, but I do think they're well coached on defense. Like I said, I don't know if their offense is going to compete with the best in this league. And the best in this league, most of them reside in the AFC, which doesn't do him, Rodgers, or the Jets any good. So, all right. So obviously next week or later this week, however you consider Sunday, is it last week? Is it this week? Whatever. Next week, we are going to obviously give our week 1 picks, starting with, of course, Thursday Night Football and the Chiefs and the Lions, and then obviously running through the rest of the weekend. But before we do that, I think we're going to give our division winner picks. And, it can be kind of a crapshoot. It's like, okay, we're just throwing crap at a wall, going based on trends and hype and everything like that. I mean, a lot of these are based on hype, actually. We hear a bunch of hype. But start in the AFC North, which I do think is kind of one of the more intriguing divisions this year.
Right.
You have a Pittsburgh Steelers team that, it seems like they're certainly on the rise. Kenny Pickett might be that guy. They have talent at wide receiver. Surprise, surprise. I mean, it's Pittsburgh. They've always had that. I think ultimately, and I know the Bengals are in this division, and I still really like them. I like Joe Burrow. I wonder how healthy he's going to be the first couple weeks of the season. I think Baltimore is going to win this division, and maybe it's. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a great year. I think he's going to be healthy. He's going to be motivated. You're playing with Odell Beckham Jr. I think they have some nice players around him. I like Baltimore in this division because I do think it's going to be a very competitive one. I think that the Steelers are going to play spoiler in a sense. I think the Browns are going to not be as good as. I don't think a lot of people are picking the Browns to have a great season. I just think they're going to be even less than that. Like I kind of think they're gonna, maybe win like 4 games. Like I really don't like the Browns this season at all. So, Browns fans, talk to me in a couple months. Maybe I'll be wrong, but ultimately, I have the Ravens winning the AFC North.
I actually agree with you. This was one that probably out of all the divisions, it probably came down to tiebreakers more than anything, and I think it was probably division record that gave Baltimore a boost. But also, I do think that Lamar's going to have a big year just with the offensive coordinator change. And I don't think Greg Roman was necessarily the worst offensive coordinator in the league, but at some point you just kind of got to adjust and evolve. And like we just talked about in an offensive driven league, I just think Lamar needed a little bit something different and seeing what Todd Monken was able to do with Georgia, throwing the ball down the field and how he was able to kind of keep the defense on his toes or on their toes with the running game at the same time. I'm really interested to see how much Lamar Jackson's able to unlock in his game that maybe we even haven't seen before. So I have Baltimore as well. I do think it's going to be close between them and Cincinnati, and I think Pittsburgh's going to be right there. I mean, Mike Tomlin still has not had a losing season in his coaching career, so it's going to be tight. But I went with Baltimore ultimately as well, just thinking that they're gonna make enough improvements that I think they'll pass Cincinnati by just enough.
And look, I mean, you could potentially say the same thing about the AFC East right now. I don't think they have as many strong teams across the board because ultimately, I like Buffalo to win the division. I'm not as like I think they've kind of plateaued in their hype, in their ascension.
Right.
Doesn't mean anything. That means they're still fully capable of winning a Super Bowl. But I think their climb has reached its peak. Now, this is their opportunity. They have to go out and win a Super Bowl and actually follow through and get it done. I know a lot of people are jumping on the Jets, jumping on Miami. I don't know anyone jumping on New England, but maybe not even New England fans. I think are picking them to win division. Although I do think they're going to be a lot better than I think people are assuming, and may not necessarily finish last in that division. Let's just put it
Right.
that way.
I agree.
But the at the end of the day, I just think Buffalo's probably going to eke out this win. I think Miami's biggest question mark. I mean, all these teams in this division have offensive line question mark. So let's call it even.
Hmm.
Outside of that, Tua. Tua is the absolute biggest question mark, more so than the coach. I think Tua, because again, you have assembled this very potent offense, especially in this current NFL. And I think there's been a lot of assumptions that Tua is just going to be fine. I think there's health concerns, and really, I want to see the kid play an entire season at a high level of football, and we just haven't seen that. So, again, I think Miami, the hype is somewhat deserved, but at the same time, I think people are glossing over a pretty big issue, and I think that could be the quarterback. So I think at the end of the day, I think Buffalo will win the division for the fourth time in a row. But this isn't going to be a runaway year for Buffalo. I think they've come back to the pack a little bit, and I think the AFC in general has gotten a little bit better across the board. So
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on this one, but ultimately I kind of went with it's you just talk about hype every year, and I think I just had to go with the team that's kind of been there and done that a little bit more in recent history. So I do think the Jets will make the playoffs, but I have the Bills eking out this division win, and I think that Josh Allen's gonna kind of take a step, I think, forward once again. I think making smarter decisions. We saw some of the old Josh Allen creep up again late last year and even into the playoffs. And obviously, it was a crazy year for Buffalo. But I think the Bills are kind of sitting where they want to be, not necessarily holding that hype that they had last year. I think they're just fine with that right now, and I think they're going to be able to just kind of find ways to adjust despite maybe losing a lot of talent in the offseason. You look at Tremaine Edmonds is gone. They lost a lot of guys that either to retirement or just kind of health concerns, older age stuff like that. So I do like the Bills. I think it'll be tight. And you mentioned the Patriots not necessarily finishing last in the division. I actually think Miami will finish last. So I just think there's so many teams that have made enough improvements, and I think Miami's just maybe not going to be able to keep up with some of those up and coming teams. So I do like Buffalo to ultimately win this division, but think it'll be close with New York.
yeah, and like I said, I do I think I pretty much agree with all that. Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, I think the Patriots offense will be better than most people are giving it credit for. I think Kendrick Bourne's going to have a nice season. You're kind of hoping maybe you get a 2016 season, LeGarrette Blount season out of Ezekiel Elliott. He dozen touchdowns, which a lot of them came on the 1 and 2 yard line, but still, being able to punch the ball in, that's something the Patriots have
Right.
struggled with the last couple of years, just scoring touchdowns in general. So, all right, the AFC South, I think, I guess it's kind of easy, but Jacksonville, Indy, I don't even know. Who knows what's going to happen with Indianapolis? Tennessee, I think they're going to be a good regular season team. I don't necessarily think they're a threat to anyone. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. And Houston, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Houston. At least they have a different regime, so to speak. But I've said it for years. I'll believe it when Houston actually does something. So for me, this is a pretty easy pick. Even though I don't think Jacksonville is, I think they're going to be a very good team. I don't know if they're going to be a real threat to the Elite Three, if you want to call them that. Possibly 4 if you include Baltimore this season. So yeah, I like Jacksonville in this division, just not as like a runaway AFC favorite or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, not really a whole lot to add. I think the biggest thing Jacksonville is probably going for them right now compared to the other teams in the division is probably just the depth that they have. I mean, I think they've done a really good job surrounding Trevor Lawrence. We'll see what Calvin Ridley looks like. A lot of time missed these last couple of years, but I think with just leaning on some of the guys that we saw last year, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, despite all the, hoopla about the contract and what that did to wide receiver market, it's, been a really good move for the Jaguars. So I just think they're the deepest team in that division. Tennessee, I mean, it's kind of like, I guess, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh to me. Vrabel's always going to be able to kind of, I think, keep his team, above water for the most part, or at least competitive. So I still think they'll be a thorn in a lot of people's sides, but I like the Jaguars to find a way to win this division.
Yeah, and excuse me. I like look. I think Tennessee. I like Mike Vrabel a lot as a head coach. I think unfortunately they're older. I don't know what their average age is, but I just think they're not the strongest in some of the more important positions. Like Ryan Tannehill's a nice player, but
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like if you're going to go move to a young starting quarterback, I'm going to probably assume it's going to take it's going to be a learning curve. So to me, Tennessee's going to they'll be a nice regular season team. They'll probably make the playoffs because I think their division is weak enough that they're going to be able to pick up 3 or 4 wins out of that at least, probably 4. I could see them beating Houston twice and Indianapolis twice. So it's. Like I said, I mean, maybe they surprised me and my phone's going off, but let's try to turn this off here. There we go. But yeah, I like Jacksonville in this division. I think it's pretty straightforward. Just like I think the AFC West, I think we can safely say it's probably Kansas City's division. Although I do think the Raiders are going to be more competitive because I like Jimmy Garoppolo more than I like Derek Carr. But that's about it. Like I think maybe the Raiders, like some of those games the Raiders lost against Kansas City. I think if you had Jimmy Garoppolo in, maybe they win, or a better shot. I just like him as a more steadier quarterback than Derek Carr. And I think between him and Devontae Adams, I think that's going to be a pretty nice little combination. So do I think they're going to have a threat for the division? No. The only now this is me getting into my wrestling fandom. The only way I see that happening is if one of the minority owners that happens to be sitting up in the press box might come down, a la Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 14, kick Jimmy Garoppolo off the field and unretire and come out and play quarterback for the Raiders, which I think he should have just done anyways. But hey, that's that's besides the point. Back to reality. AFC West. I mean, this is Kansas City's division to own until further notice. You're just not getting, the other team. Look, Sean Payton, certainly an upgrade for Denver. I think Russell Wilson is cooked. So yeah, that's pretty much where Denver's at. The Raiders, like I said, they'll be a pretty good team, maybe looking 10 for a wild card spot. And then look, Los Angeles, kind of getting to that point where it's like I need to see it from them. Forget the hype. I don't need the hype. I just need to see it. So yeah, Kansas City, AFC West.
Yeah, Kansas City, it's kind of just crazy how how dominant really they've been over some of the rivals. They haven't lost to Denver since Peyton Manning's last year in 2015. The Chargers games have always been obviously the most nerve-wracking for the Chiefs. So I just think there's going to be a lot of just fascinating moments to watch this year out of this division because you mentioned Russell Wilson. I think even before he came to Denver, I think there was obviously signs of decline that you could really buy into, and I didn't necessarily get
I
that
think we talked
encouraged.
about it on this show.
Right. Didn't necessarily get encouraged by anything in the preseason, and granted, the preseason it's different kind of reps, but not necessarily a fan of what I saw of him. So I do think the Chiefs will win this division. I think the Chargers is probably the most. I guess how would I put it? I'd say they're probably the most pressured team in the AFC in terms of I think just making it back to the playoffs. The way they lost that playoff game and just knowing their history, it's going to be I think a tough hump for them to get over this year. But I do like the Chiefs to win the division once again.
And their Super Bowl opponent in the NFC East. This is a division that hasn't had a repeat division winner in quite some time, but I don't think there's any reason to doubt the Eagles right now. They're one of the few teams that you can kind of go to the bank with the quarterback that they have. I think Jalen Hurts, unfortunately, missed a couple of games at the end of last season, and I think that greatly impacted his chances for the MVP. But we could be talking about Jalen Hurts as the reigning MVP this season. And look, he had a great game in the Super Bowl and a loss. I
Right.
mean, it happens. It doesn't, they lost doesn't mean he was terrible, and he certainly showed a lot in last season. And I truly believe that they're gonna, or maybe hoping, because he's also my fantasy quarterback this year. So maybe I'm hoping, maybe it's a little bit more of a bias here, but no, I do truly believe that this team is. I mean, they're a really good team, and I'm with you. I'm not sold on Dak. Not necessarily the Cowboys. I'm just like he turned the ball over so much for a very long stretch of time, and that's really the last thing that we remember. And until I forget about it, I can't forget about it. You know what I mean? I got to
Right.
see a stretch where he's not turning the ball over at all, and then maybe I'll start forgetting about that. But for now, I like the Eagles. The Commanders, I think they'll win 7 or 8 games, but that's about it. That's about their ceiling. And then who am I missing here? What am I?
Giants. Yeah.
Giants. Oh yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I did not mean to disrespect the Giants because I actually like Daniel Jones. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I think
Yeah.
the so I kind of like the Giants, but kind of like at the same time, 8-9 wins doesn't really do it for me. And like I said, I just think the Eagles are really good. I think that actually a spoiler alert. I actually think they're going back to the Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. That'll be next week. Maybe we'll do that. So, but yeah, so to me, I like the Eagles in this division. I'm not worried about this non-repeat division winner nonsense. I think the Eagles buck that trend.
Yeah, I think just and maybe it's just me listening to a lot of New Heights episodes with Jason Kelsey on there, but I just really like the way Nick Sirianni operates. He's quickly kind of become one of my favorite coaches, and just the mentality that this team has. I think when you kind of combine that with them being probably one of the best rosters at almost every one of the premium positions in the league, both the trenches. Probably the best offensive line for Jalen Hurts, and Hurts has always throughout his career taken another step forward each season. So yeah, I'm not really worried about the no repeat division winner. I really like the way the Eagles team operates, and I think obviously it's always hard to get back to the Super Bowl, but when you lose a game the way they did last year, blowing that lead and just some mistakes that were made late, I think there's obviously a lot of extra hunger and motivation that's going to come from that, and I think the Eagles are built for it. So I like them to win this division. I guess Washington, I would say this, even if you don't make the playoffs, I think it's a winning year now that Dan Snyder's out of there. So I think Washington fans still have a lot to be happy for this year. But I really do like Sam Howell. I'm interested to see um, what Bieniemy's offense is ultimately going to look like there for a full season. But Sam Howell is someone I'm really excited to watch and learn about this season. So, but yeah, I like the Eagles overall.
Yeah, let's just for Commanders fans, let's hope it doesn't go south like it has for Mets fans, because they're riding a pretty nice high there after Steve Cohen took over. But um, I wouldn't ask them about it right now. So, all right, so NFC North, interesting division.
Yeah.
No more Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings are the Vikings. The Lions are the hype of the league. But maybe I was a little drunk when I made this pick. But I think the Bears are going to win this division. I don't know. I think Jordan Love's going to be fine in Green Bay. I think Minnesota is a football team that exists and they play every week except for their bye week. The Lions, I mean, I think, again, great hype. They might even come out and surprise Kansas City on Thursday. That wouldn't necessarily shock me. But I think when it's all said and done, I think the Bears, yeah, and yeah, I think the Bears I think they just have a potentially better team across the board. And look, I'm kind of buying into the Justin Fields hype. I think Justin Fields is going to have. I mean, look, his career record to this point is obviously not great, but I think that's in the past. And I don't know. I mean, I think the Bears are going to win this division. And you know what? I hope I'm right, because right now they have the fourth worst odds of all four of those teams to win. So I think I'd be all right.
Yeah, it's I this is a division, I guess, if I probably, out of all the divisions, even the NFC South, I probably wouldn't fight anyone with whatever answer you want to come up with this one. I do have the Lions. I think Green Bay is one of those teams, as the offseason has gone on and we're getting closer to the start of the season. I think I feel a little bit better about Green Bay than I thought I would have. As far as how competitive I think they will be. I really like what we've seen from Jordan Love so far, and just kind of the mentality that he's entering the season with. Finally with the gig in his hands, and I think that Minnesota is just one of the most easy, come back to earth candidates. I mean, not just because of the record in one score games, but lost a lot on the defense. Just a really young defense overall. So even if Kirk Cousins has another strong season, I just don't know if they can stop most of the opponents on their tough schedule. So I am going with the Lions ultimately to win the division, but they're kind of like Jacksonville to me. I don't think it'll be a runaway. I think it'll be maybe 10 wins this division, if that. And I think the Lions will find a way just to win it with the offense that they have compared to I think the overall offensive depth of some of these other teams in the division. That was kind of the biggest difference point to me.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I can see that, and I'll point out that Kyle agreed with me, and I like when people agree with me and everything like that. But yeah, that's kind of part of the reasoning too, where I do think that the Packers, I liked what I saw from Jordan Love, but I do think he is probably going into the season I'd say fourth worst, or however you want to word it, fourth best, glass half full type of thing. But I do think he ranks below Justin Fields. And again, I'm buying into the hype a little bit. I think Justin Fields is going to have a a very good season this year. And does that mean the Bears are going to the Super Bowl? No. But
Right.
I think it's going to be good enough for them to maybe surprise some people and win this division because, well, no one's really talking about it. So NFC South, and I think Kyle actually said this in his comment, someone has to win it. So I guess I'll go with the Saints. Derek Carr's the best quarterback in the division? Question mark. Right?
Um, most experience. I don't know.
Okay. That might be
Been there, done that.
that might be a better way to word it. But look, I think Baker Mayfield's going to have some nice moments with the Bucks. I mean, he's going to have he'll have a couple games where you're like, oh my God, look, it's Baker. He's going crazy, dancing in the end zone. But then you're going to have games where he throws the worst timed interception. The team's just not competitive, and ultimately they may end up only winning 6 games. I mean, shit,
Right.
they're only. I mean, shoot, sorry, FCC. Fortunately, we don't follow their rules. So, but shoot, no, I mean, they won 8 games last year, and look, I think there's a lot of issues with that team last year, and a lot of them weren't corrected. If not, I think they got worse because, well, one, I do believe they downgraded at quarterback, so that's going to be an issue, and two, they're getting older. I don't
Right.
think they're. I don't like their head coach. I don't, and I think as bad as things were, I still think Brady masked a lot of problems that team had because I mean that team was so poorly coached that I think anything less than one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league, they would have maybe won 2 or 3 games. So I don't think it's going to be a great season for Tampa. Yeah, Kyle's right. Bryce Young might end up being the best quarterback in that division by year's end. So, yeah, and look, I mean, if there's a year for Tampa to absolutely sink the ship, so to
Yeah.
speak, it would be this year. And Caleb Williams and maybe the Brady disciple, son of primetime. We'll see what happens. So, anyways, yeah, I like the Saints in this just because, well. I mean, we had to pick someone, right? They can't all
Right.
tie. I mean, I guess they could, but eventually someone would win.
Yeah, I went with the Saints here ultimately. It's just the only thing that gives me pause, I guess, is Dennis Allen at head coach. Given his history, just how it was with the Raiders as quick as it was, and even just what we've seen with the Saints already last year. Um, with how bad the NFC is, I think, believe it or not, I think we could see 2 teams in this division find a way to squeak into the playoffs. I want to buy into Atlanta so bad, but I'm kind of reserving judgment on Desmond Ritter until we see a little bit more from him. I do like Carolina to be a little bit more competitive than Atlanta, but I think he'll be the Saints winning this division. I think this is a big candidate, obviously, to bounce back defensively. They didn't really have a good year last year, but I think this is going to be a little bit of a bounce back year for them, and I think they'll find a way to win this division.
This this could be another sub 500 division winner back-to-back
Right.
seasons. Like that I think is not even that outrageous to say. I actually almost feel like that is absolutely what's going to happen with this team because they may beat up and look good against each other, but at the end of the day, I'm not a big Derek Carr fan. I think he's good, but good doesn't win in this league.
Hmm.
Maybe it beats bad teams occasionally, but if you're just good, you're not going to compete. So to me, 8 wins might win the division. It did last year, and I don't think it got any better. Again, the wild card is Bryce Young. I mean, if he comes out and right off the bat, maybe he wins a bunch of games for Carolina, and okay, yeah, maybe that's the wild card. But other than that, we know the ceiling. I think for the other 3 teams,
Right.
for the most part. All right, NFC West, last division. Look, I San Francisco, although I do think, and kind of like a Miami, but I think I don't want to say worse. I mainly because I think the expectations for San Francisco, not just this season, but the last handful of seasons, has been they are a prime Super Bowl candidate winner. I mean, the defense, the special teams, the talent, injuries have obviously played a role, but it's the quarterback position. And I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to go all in on Brock Purdy. And it's a matter of, well, okay, we've seen some from him, and he very well could be that guy that goes and has a career like Tom Brady, undrafted guy or drafted late, this, that, and the other, comes out of nowhere, takes over the reins and makes a run to the Super Bowl or whatever. We've seen it. Maybe it happens. I'm not banking on it right now because, well, maybe this is hindsight, but going back and seeing some of even Brady's early starts, there were moments. There was his first start against Indianapolis where there was a lot of huge things where he outdueled Peyton Manning. There's a huge comeback win against San Diego early in that season where you kind of saw early on. You know how the kids say he is him now.
Right.
You kind of saw it very early on with this guy, and I know the narrative around him was kind of crazy. And I'm not saying Brock Purdy hasn't shown it. I mean, I am kind of saying that because, like, I think he played very well for this team,
Mm-hmm.
but so did Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo was, and whether or not you like, I'm not a huge fan of EPA, but it won Aaron Rodgers an MVP 2 years ago, so I guess some people value it. Jimmy Garoppolo was consistently one of the two best quarterbacks in the league, usually because of EPA, and I contend that, well, that's greatly impacted by, I hate to say the system, but the offensive setup. And San Francisco is unique. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. They have guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and, now Christian McCaffrey. I mean, you have guys that, just do very unique things on the football field. And I think it elevates mediocre quarterbacks to the point where people think Jimmy Garoppolo is a great quarterback. Is he great? No, he's a good quarterback. He can win you some games. But think about it. That San Francisco team could win 14. Yeah, very true, Kyle. I had to choose my words closely so I wouldn't say system quarterback. But I think the San Francisco offense elevates quarterbacks. And I think this team, I keep saying, I mean, they made a huge mistake not pursuing Brady because I think they have 2 Super Bowls right now over the last couple of years if they sign Tom Brady. Because I think if you put an elite quarterback in that position, I think they could potentially be a very unstoppable team. I don't think Brock Purdy is that elite guy yet, or at least I haven't seen it. So I like San Francisco in this division a lot. I think they're clearly the best team in that division. I think Geno and the Seahawks team is going to look a little bit more like they did in the second half
Right.
as they did the first half. Good, not great. I think this is San Francisco's division to win pretty easily. And I do worry, though, that at the end of the day, quarterback's going to be the biggest question mark for this team, and health, obviously.
Yeah, and I think it's just with Purdy last year, everyone was kind of waiting, for the week on, this is kind of gonna be the week where he screws up, and it just never happened. And I just think, back to some of his days at Iowa State, and obviously the NFL is a lot different, game than college football, but lot of mistakes, a lot of turnovers the year that everyone was kind of expecting him to take that next step, and it just never really translated. Ended up obviously being a 7th round pick, but there was, I think going into his junior year, a lot of hype of him maybe being a late 1st round guy, and just didn't live up to that hype. So I do think there's going to be some stuff that is going to hold him back a little bit this season, especially coming off the injury. I think compared to some of these other teams in the NFC when it comes to the playoffs. But I do think they win this division just because it is, I think, one of the easier divisions to win just with how their roster's set up right now. We mentioned the Rams, I think, earlier talking about salary cap stuff. They got, I can't remember what the number is, but it's like at least 30 or 40 some guys that are going to be either, rookies or undrafted rookies or within their first 2 years of the league. You got obviously the Cardinals, situation is probably one of the worst in the league right now. And then the Seahawks, I totally agree with you. I think we'll see more of the second half Geno than we did the early half last year. So I do like the Niners to win this one pretty handily. It's just going to be interesting to see what this year's playoff result looks like for them compared to the last couple years.
And with that, we're gonna say goodbye for the day. No, I do want to cut it there because like I said earlier in the show, we are going to be back later in the week as we do have the kickoff game Thursday Night Football, Chiefs, Lions, and we're going to be giving our Week 1 picks then. And maybe we'll change our mind. Maybe I will wake up tomorrow and say, did I really pick the Chicago Bears to win the NFC North? But we'll see. But anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you later in the week. Have a good one.